Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. With composers who care about the educational needs of your students, Excelsior Music Publishing offers music for concert band and jazz ensemble, as well as method books and solo and ensemble works for all levels and occasions. This includes a wide selection of festive music for fall, holiday, and Christmas concerts. Find music for your next performance at excelsiormusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Tuner Caddy is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The Tuner Caddy was created by Mark Casperson, a band director with over 38 years of experience. Like most of us, he was tired of dropped tuners, wasted time, and students fumbling with their gear. So he did what any passionate teacher would do. He invented a solution. Mark designed the original Tuner Caddy after testing 57 different versions. The classic model fits right onto most music stands, holds any tuner, and even has a pencil holder. Then he added the Student Pro, a slimmer, binder-friendly with magnets, so it sticks right to the wire stands. And now there's even the TCT60M, a full tuner and metronome combo that's transposable and includes a 6-foot mic. Super practical and more affordable than most other options out there. The best part is that these tools don't just help kids stay organized, they actually improve how we teach intonation and tone. Tuner Caddy is being used by some of the top programs in the country, from Texas to Virginia, and it's even been on stage at the Midwest Clinic and Music for All Festival. You can find Tuner Caddy at tunercaddy.com, at local retailers, or through Music and Arts, Sweetwater, and Premier Music Teaching Aids. They even offer support for educators writing grants. Check them out at tunercaddy.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves this. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players, not just for your beginners, but for older students as well. Join thousands of students and bands already seeing the difference. And keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. I want to thank Austin Custom Brass for being a sponsor of today's podcast. Trent Austin started this wonderful shop back in the Boston area many years ago and has moved to Kansas City. Check out their unique line of doublers instruments that are perfect for students, band programs, and players of all ages. The Austin Custom Brass Doublers Flugelhorn is their most popular selling instrument, available in 5 different beautiful finishes. These flugelhorns come with a case in Austin Custom Brass's Fab 5 mouthpiece. The Doublers Flugelhorn offers a quality sound, playability, and affordability. Get one for yourself or your whole trumpet section today. Call Austin Custom Brass at 816-410-0826. They are located in Kansas City, Missouri, but they ship all over the country, and they're wonderful humans and great people to hang with. Austin Custom Brass works with band programs from all over the country. They can provide a bid to you today, work within your school's budget, and accept POs. Call their team today at 816-410-0826 or email at info@austincustombrass.com. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 283. I'm here with Megan Vinther from Everett, Washington, Everett High School. How are you, Megan?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you?
Beautiful. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to checking out some of your music and talking to you about your band and how you teach and all that sort of stuff. So tell us a little bit about your program at Everett.
Well, I have been at Everett High School for, I think I just finished year 15. So it's been a little while. Prior to that, I taught at the middle school just down the hill. That is one of my partner schools at North Middle School in Everett. And that was my second job ever. So I started off teaching on the Oregon coast for a few years after I got out of college, and then family stuff moved us back up to the Seattle area. And so Everett's just north of Seattle. Having been there, I've been there 15 years. I was at the middle school before, like I said, and I took a year off when my daughter was born. And our district guarantees you a position when you come back. If you take a year of leave, like you're not guaranteed your same position, but you're guaranteed a position. And as a band director with only a secondary certification, I knew I was pretty safe. Like I'm going to end up in a band job in middle school or high school. It's going to be fine. And the high school director that I was working with at the time retired during that year when I was on leave. And so when I came back from leave, they placed me at the high school, and it was actually just a really lovely transition to teach kids in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then have them again in 10, 11, 12. And so it was not a difficult, it can be really hard to come into a high school program where the teacher that was there before me was there for like 20 years, I think 18, 19, 20 years, something like that. And it's weird to like say those numbers and be close to those numbers at this point.
Yeah.
Thinking that that's like a really long time to be somewhere. Um, and so I'd worked with him, and the person that like he ended up retiring early in the year when I was on leave. And so they had a 1 year leave replacement person, and that person was able to, he had been an alumni of that program and was actually my long-term sub when I went out on maternity leave from the middle school. And so he kind of like was with those kids as well. And so we had a really nice um, team that was able to like make that transition really, really smooth. And so I think, yeah, thinking about beginning of the school year type things and people, maybe taking over new jobs and stuff like that, having a somewhat of a relationship with the people that were there before you is so nice. Just to have that chance
Yeah.
to collaborate with them a little bit or get an idea of what the program was like. So at Everett, my positions changed a little bit over the years. I started off with two concert bands, a jazz band, and 2 periods of guitar class. So I started off with just, band, jazz band, and guitar. A few years ago, we brought orchestra back to our district after many, many years away. And so I dropped one of the guitar classes. Our choir teacher picked it up, and I taught orchestra. I still do teach string orchestra. So then it was, band, orchestra, jazz, and guitar for a while. And then 3 years ago, we're going into our 4th year. I dropped the other guitar class and picked up and was able to start a percussion ensemble class, which I absolutely love. I had been fighting for it or advocating for it for a long time. And to finally get that class and to have percussion ensemble and have those kids have a chance to like really learn their instruments in a way that's more focused as opposed to
Yep.
like in the big band rehearsal has been amazing, and has really it's put a lot of growth in our program, just because those kids can focus on their needs as percussionists.
So you have two concert bands, and are the kids from both of those bands in the percussion class instead of the concert band class?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I put together like this big spreadsheet of the pieces that we're working on in concert band, in wind ensemble, in orchestra, if there's any percussion stuff for orchestra, and then our specific percussion ensemble things. And I'll put all the kids in there and try to make sure that they're, they've got one battery item, they've got one mallet item, they've got one auxiliary part, so that we're working on the skills across the spectrum of instruments. And it's a little chaotic and a little difficult to do that sometimes, but it serves us really well. I think that, then you're not just like, well, I play snare drum.
for people who are kind of perking up and listening to the percussion class talk, by the time this comes out, if they go back to episode number 276, I met with Alice Castro, and the entire thing was about kind of ways to run a percussion class similar to what you're talking about, some actual things to do and all that. So if people want more on that, please feel free to check that out. Megan, as a band quote unquote person who is teaching orchestra, right? Tell me something I need to know as like someone who does not teach orchestra, right? I know this is a question that's kind of off there, but like I kind of think of teaching orchestra in a certain way, but I've never actually done it. So is it easier than we think? Is it harder than we think? What's the focus other than what we normally do as band directors, things like that?
Oh man. I firmly believe that like the ensemble sorting hat does its job early in life. Like when kids choose their path of music, if they're a vocalist and they're doing choir, or they like are pulled towards band or orchestra. And so I think that the breed of kid, for lack of a better word, orchestra kids are different than band kids. And it took me a while. I'm sarcastic. I'm silly. I like to have fun in rehearsal. And my orchestra kids were like so serious. I was like, okay. And it took a while to warm up as a group. And so I felt like it took a little longer, maybe. And I've only been teaching orchestra for a few years. So I don't have the full picture of it yet, I don't think. But the things that I found most difficult were that like feeling this kind of reciprocity from the students. It felt more, I try to do a lot of collaboration with my students. And so they have the freedom to, state their opinion about the music, or I think that this is happening here, or these kinds of like back and forth, rather than just like me being the all-knowing conductor. Um, and I don't get as much of that from the orchestra kids. There's not as much like talk back.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's kind of maybe that's like orchestra culture or string culture coming through.
If I can ask you,
yeah.
when you added orchestra, did that affect your band numbers? Like, because in a school, a lot of times we think there's a certain kind of pot of kids who are going to be music kids. I know we think every kid should be, but it's just obviously not realistic. So then some people can add orchestras and like it just adds to their program, and other people try to add orchestras, but then it kind of takes away some of the band numbers. How has it been with your experience?
I don't think it did for me. It was a weird time when we added it because it was just right before COVID. And the way they started it kind of at the middle schools, and then it like worked its way up. And so my partner middle schools, the first year we started orchestra, they had some like 8th grade beginners. And so then those 8th grade beginners came to me as 2nd year players, freshmen. Right. And so I had basically like, a 2nd year string orchestra, and a lot of the kids had only played for 1 year. And so we're like, okay, book 2, here we go. And so, we built that up until COVID. And then we only had like 8 to 12 kids to start off with. It started really, really small. COVID hits, right? Everybody's back online. My numbers tanked again in both band and orchestra. And then when we came back, things have just been steadily growing over the last 4 years. And so orchestra was like 37 this year, and both of my bands were around the same number. And so for the first time since pre-COVID, we're back over 100 overall for the whole program. So we're not like super huge, but every class is over 30 kids, with the exception of percussion ensemble, which is like 18 or something like that, right. Which is ideal,
Yeah. Cool. I interviewed a little while ago heavy jazz player Tatum Greenblatt, who's in New York City, teaches at Juilliard and jazz at Lincoln Center and all that.
Yeah.
And he's from, I forget which high school, but it's in Washington as well. I don't know much about, being from the other coast in Maine, about the Washington band scene. For people who don't know much about the state of Washington and the bands there, can you tell us just a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah, it's quite varied. Washington State is pretty big, not as big as Maine, but it's a pretty big state, and is divided by the Cascade Mountain Range. And so we have Eastern Washington and Western Washington. There's a lot of rural areas. I mean, people know about Seattle and Tacoma and stuff like that, but maybe Spokane, but there's a lot of rural space in Washington State. And so there are lots of small schools, and
is that on the eastern side?
Both, actually. Both, the west side around Puget Sound is more of the kind of metropolis areas, right? Seattle, Tacoma, and whatnot is like along the water there. Eastern Washington, your bigger cities are, Pullman, where Washington State University is, and that's not even that like a really big city generally. It's like kind of small town feel. You've got Spokane, Ellensburg. They're not like super huge cities. Seattle metro area is just over 1 million people or so. So I would say that, but there's there's quite a bit of land, and so there's quite a bit of rural schools and small schools. So in our WMEA, we actually have like a small schools coalition or group that gets together and meets, which I think is really great to have that resource.
Megan, who's a local teacher where you are in a program that you think does a really good job?
Well, I think that in our area, we're really fortunate to have a lot of teachers that are doing their thing really well. Something that my friend, fellow teacher, fellow composer, Aaron Keaton Howard, talks about is being authentic, and being who you really are, for your students and showing up in a way that's authentic. And I think we have a lot of teachers that do that here in Washington State, regardless of what their program looks like, that it's like authentic to them. And so some of the people that I look to, Megan Wagner is one. She's like our about to be our WMEA president, or is I don't know. I've known Megan for forever. Like, we met in Washington All State Band as students, forever ago. And she is down at Auburn Riverside High School, which is just south of Seattle, and does an incredible job with. She runs a jazz festival that's fantastic. It's really focused on education and on collaboration. She brings in, a different ensemble every year. Sometimes it's our like local military ensembles, or a professional ensemble. So there's somebody that's there performing for the students and giving clinics every year, which I think is really great. And she also does an incredible job of chamber music and solo and ensemble stuff. And so the kids are getting these like chamber music skills that then obviously translates to your large ensembles as well. And so, she's just an incredible teacher and a really good friend of mine. And Megan Wagner at Auburn Riverside High School.
I love that. So a question I could ask kind of two ways. I don't know which way is going to kind of speak to you best. One would be, maybe like a advice you'd give to your younger band director self. The other way to ask that is advice you have for people maybe just starting as teachers.
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit on that last question with being authentic. When I first started out, my first job, I went to the University of Oregon in Eugene, and then got a job on the Oregon coast like straight away, right after graduation, basically. Started teaching at Siuslaw High School in Florence, Oregon, which is a small little coastal town on the Oregon coast. Absolutely beautiful there. And I, as a young teacher, like, 22 years old, coming into a program that had previously had only male band directors and only like middle-aged, right? There had been nobody that was like a young teacher in that program for a very long time. Principal, a woman, the principal was like on vacation or something over the summer. And the principal, when he came back, like told me I wouldn't have hired you. So that was like a really nice, vote of confidence to start off. And so I felt like, I don't know, I didn't feel super supported there necessarily, but I kind of felt like I had to be somebody else. I felt like I had to personify something that didn't feel authentic to me. And I don't know how much of that was like outside pressure and how much of that was like, I'm a new teacher and I don't really know what my identity is as a teacher yet. I don't really know what teaching style is. Because I mean, you spend so much time in college, doing homework or practicing or whatever. And your student teaching experiences are really, really valuable. But I feel like they maybe don't give us enough time to really learn to teach. That there's it's difficult and it is a skill. And so I think when I started out, I was still trying to figure out who I was as a teacher and what my vibe was for what it felt like to be me as a director and what my program would look like,
which is all extremely normal, right? Like, these are things that normal. Like when you talk to jazz artists, it's coming from Clark Terry, the 3 stages of being a jazz performer, ideally, is I think the same as 3 stages of being a band director. What is it? Imitate, assimilate, innovate, right? So like,
exactly.
Right. So you're imitating who? Your high school band director, your college band director, other people you see to teach, like, though they do this and it works, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So I love your message about like not having to do that forever.
And I think one of my college band director was Bob Ponto at the University of Oregon, and he's like one of my favorite people on the planet. And he came out to visit me on the coast, like, just observe, see how things are going. It's just an hour or so from University of Oregon out to Florence, where I was teaching. And he came out and hung out for the day. worked with my students a little bit, and he had some really great words for me that, I admired him so much as a teacher. Um, and he was saying that, when he first started out, he's like, day one, after my first day of teaching, he's like, 100% of my teaching career was terrible. He's like, I was not a good teacher. Day one, 100% of my career was bad. Right? He's like, day two, 100% of my career was bad. And it's like, eventually that average goes up, right? You have more good days than bad days. You learn more about yourself. You become more comfortable in who you are as a conductor and in your skills as a teacher. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I wouldn't say like autopilot, that you get to this point where you're on autopilot, but you get to a point where you are comfortable in who you are and in your teaching ability. And so it feels more natural and less clunky, I think. And so knowing that that's coming, that's something that's going to happen, yeah. I think maybe would have made me feel better as a younger teacher.
If people can think of it like, you may have started your instrument 15 years before you start teaching, or whatever that is. You've been playing 15 years. You don't have 15 years of experience being a band director. Like when you start being a band director, imagine you're back on your instrument brand new. It's gonna take you some time. And some people, are maybe better at the beginning than others. But yeah, you will hit your stride. Just keep getting better every year.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that Bob Pondo also said was that, when you come into a new program, as a new director, whatever stage of your career it is, thinking more about what he said, evolution and not revolution, right? And so you're going to come into a program that maybe it doesn't look exactly the way you want it to look, and it's going to take time to make that program look the way you want it to, and coming in with the spirit of revolution, like I'm going to change everything right now, can be detrimental to your mental health and your physical health. Like it's a lot to try to do that, right? Yeah. And so thinking more about evolution, it's going to take time to do this. We're going to maybe change one thing this year, or maybe not. Maybe year one, we just are like, we go with the flow with what the program is. And then you can kind of get an idea of what's going on or what has been going on, what's going really well, what you want to keep, what you want to change, and doing that in a slow way. Mm-hmm. that works for you and for your students, so that you're not, it's not a constant battle if you're trying to like change everything. We all know that the kids that like, well, that's not how we do it.
That's right. It's hard because it's their
how Mr. So-and-so did it.
It's hard because it's their band, right? And you're the new person. I know. It's talking with Travis Weller, he said you have one job your first year, and that's just to survive. And talking with Ree Bailey, we talked about, he's like, just change what you absolutely have to change.
There we go.
That 1 year, just change that one thing. And again, Travis Weller said, just survive the first year, right? So change very little as you go through. So
tread water, right? Yeah, like tread water. Your head above water.
Yeah. So Megan, as someone who's a band director, if we were to walk into your classroom, I know you mentioned already, like being your authentic self, like we've covered that. What's something maybe on the pedagogical side that you think you do really well? Maybe it's your rehearsal pacing, maybe it's the way you program, maybe it's the way you reach kids. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I build culture really well. I try my particular program where I'm at in North Everett, is not some place where kids have a lot of resources. So it's not a school where, kids are taking private lessons. I have like maybe one or two a year that take private lessons. And so to build a culture of excitement around getting better, around personal accountability for that, and someplace that is kind and helpful, joyful, inclusive. Like everybody has a place in music.
Sure,
everybody does. Everyone is musical. And some of us maybe have more innate talent, or some of us maybe are more willing to do the work to practice and get better than others. But band is a collective right? Band is literally means together. And so for us together to get better, we have to help each other do that. Those of us with, more skills need to help those that are struggling. And so I just that's something that I try to do. How can we best help each other um, to do better collectively? And you would come in and you would find kids that are um, kind and silly and having a good time and learning music, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
I love that these kids are excited about music, and that we have opportunities that those kids that really want to like go for it and do more can do that. But there's also a place for the kid, who opens his trumpet case and there's spider webs in it, after the summer.
Yeah. I
True
was one of
story.
those
That
kids.
was, that
Yeah.
was a true story.
So our repertoire is our curriculum. Most people will say that. So I kind of want to kind of make a segue here. So as a composer, we're going to look at some of your pieces and maybe talk about each one in what like a teacher could teach through them, right? Like
Yeah.
what are some of the teaching points on each one of those? But so first, when did you kind of get your foot in the door with some publishing companies?
Um, that was really just right after the pandemic, and it was probably 2021 or so, 2022. Um, I've always written music. I mean, I started on piano as a tiny kid. I don't remember not playing the piano. We had a piano in my house, and so I would play it all the time. And then started taking lessons when I was, 6 or 7 or something. So I don't remember not making up songs, not playing the piano, not like writing music. And so all along, I've always written stuff, or arranged things for my students. When I was in low income schools, I have no budget,
Mm-hmm.
to arrange music for them because I couldn't afford to buy anything. Um, and so I talked about Erin Keaton Howard earlier, and she's a really dear friend of mine. And she's also a composer. And during the pandemic, she wrote her first piece. I think it was her first piece that got published, Wanderlust, which came out with Randall Standridge. And I was just like, you can do that. You can just like write something and then send it to a publisher, and they just publish it. Like it hadn't been presented to me as an option, that you could be a composer. And maybe some of that was, the time that I grew up in as a younger person, that like uh it just wasn't shown as an option that like composers are real people, like
Okay.
there's real people that do this as their job. That wasn't something that was even on my radar. And so to see Erin, who's, a few years younger than me, just like do this, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is a thing. And so I kind of, revised and put together some of my work, and I sent in. She kind of connected me with Sean Murphy at Murphy Music Press. Um, so maybe her first thing was published with Murphy. I don't remember, but um, I sent in my first piece, which was "Who Sings When Skies Are Gray" to Sean Murphy, and he was like, "I love it. Let's do it." And like he's so fast at putting things up on his site that it was literally like within 2 weeks, my first piece was published. And I was just like floored. I had no idea. I expected lots of no's, I expected lots of um, non-responses even. And so to kind of, to have that experience was really surprising to me. And honestly, it was delightful. Like I was like, oh, okay, I can do this thing. Um, and Erin and I will say that to each other from time. We're like, we're doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever the
Yeah.
thing is, we're doing the thing.
That's
So
cool. I love that.
yeah.
All right, let's get into we're going to do 5 pieces, both for jazz ensemble as well as for concert band, kind of grades 2 through 4.5 ish kind of
Four and a
thing.
half.
Yeah. So we're going to start with a grade 3, Snow on Snow. Tell us a little bit about what the piece is about and what people can kind of teach their kids through it.
Yeah, Snow on Snow. I wanted to write a winter piece that wasn't necessarily a holiday piece. I did end up using. I love I grew up in the church, and I just, I love kind of hymn tunes, and that music growing up is just kind of part of my uh musical identity. And I love In the Bleak Midwinter. I think it's just this
Mm,
gorgeous,
it sure is.
beautiful,
Yep.
tune. Um, and and Snow on Snow, that like comes from the lyrics of that, right? There's this part, it's like snow on snow on snow. And I loved that. It's so simple, but I was like, that was beautiful. And so I started writing this piece, just thinking about, we don't get a ton of snow here in the Pacific Northwest, but when we do, everything shuts down
Mm.
because we don't get snow very often. And so it's only like a couple of inches, and there's no school. And so just like you like sit on your couch with your tea or coffee and like watch the snow fall. That's kind of where this piece came from. And In the Bleak Midwinter is quoted in it quite a bit as well. And so I kind of put original stuff with In the Bleak Midwinter. Um, what does it teach? The key of A flat.
Love it. Yeah.
Kids, that A flat concert is like, okay, guys, we gotta. It's always let's see, it's always the E flat, right? The or D flat, right? Kids like that D flat concert. That, oh my gosh, why is that
Yeah.
note so hard?
That's why I don't have any hair left. That's
Yeah.
right. That's what it is. And
There's
and
also
it's in
quite a bit
three.
of
It's in
percussion.
3/4 as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. There's, I think, six percussion parts, I think, for that tune as well. That one's published with Randall, and everybody knows that Randall Standards loves to write for percussionists and I spent a lot of time in college as a percussionist as well, and so um, played in the front ensemble of my marching band, and so I love to write for percussion. And maybe you don't have six percussionists, but that's okay. Like, there are parts if you do.
Yeah.
It gives them so, and they're not, I try to make them not boring. It's not like you have just one wind chime swipe every 24 bars or something.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's listen to it. Here's Snow on Snow. So the next piece we're going to do is one of your jazz band pieces called Bigfoot Stomp. It's an E flat major funk tune.
Yeah. So Bigfoot Stomp, well, being from the Pacific Northwest, Bigfoot lives here. So we had to like write a piece about Bigfoot. Um, this tune came about as a consortium, or sort of a joint commission, I guess, between Cynthia Plank down in Portland, Julie Bounds in Eugene, Oregon, and the Northwest Jazz Conspiracy, which is an adult jazz band up here in the Everett area.
Cool.
And I don't know, maybe it's just like the Northwest Jazz Conspiracy, the name of that band, where I was like, all right, we got to have like some sort of cryptid or something. So, so I wrote a tune about Bigfoot. It's a little bit of a Barry Sachs feature. They get to start the tune off. Your Barry Sachs players always want to play like the lowest notes, so try to give them a little bit of that. So it kind of came about with them. I want it to be because Cynthia's group is a middle school, and so I want it to be accessible to middle school students. range wise, but also challenging rhythmically, or some sort of wanted to, like, it's a grade 3 basically, but we wanted it to be a grade 3 that was accessible to middle school players who maybe didn't have a wider playing range. And so, the trumpet parts, trombone parts aren't super high, to give those developing players who maybe have, you know, it's a funk tune, and so there's some, like, those rhythms that maybe they're not used to seeing, but they're very repetitive, and so you work on it a little bit and they're going to be fine. To give them something that, oh my god, this looks hard. And then it's really, like, it's not that bad, but they see the 16th notes and are just like, oh my god. And a 3/8 bar.
I saw that. A note too about these syncopated funk rhythms. Like, I think it's important that we teach our kids how to count, right? Like, we don't want everything to be, hey, it goes like this, and we just do by rote teaching. But as long as you're doing that on a consistent basis, there's nothing wrong with having a tune like this and going, hey, this rhythm you see, it sounds like this. Copy
and
me.
Then they'll go,
play
oh,
this.
okay.
Yeah. Because it's way more fun than going one E, like.
I mean, that's funny. Yeah. If you could get them all to say that, I think it'd be hilarious.
Yeah. And then I wrote in here too that you have that quote from the chicken too.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that lick. The dee da 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 da.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Except that's where I put the 3/8 bar, and so it's just dee da 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 1.
That's cool.
And it was a little bit of a joke, like a little bit of an inside joke, because many of us have done the chicken, right, or have heard it at jazz festivals, and often that lick is rushed, right? Like, often get this, like, syncopated lick in any tune. Syncopation, we all want to rush syncopation, and so I was like, well, what if we just take an 8th note out? Like, like, they're gonna rush anyway. Let's just make it shorter. And so that was just like a little bit of an inside joke of, like, they're gonna rush that anyhow. Let's just make it.
That's great. And when you're doing a tune like this, it's not a standard tune. Anything you can to do to tie it to a historical tune. I know Chicken's not that old, but tie it to something that's established as well. You're teaching more. You're using this newer piece as a vehicle to teach something else as well.
Yeah. Apologies to Chris Berg. That's.
Oh, he's fine. Don't worry about Chris.
Yeah, he's doing all right.
All right. Here's Bigfoot Stomp. The next piece we're going to listen to is a grade 2 piece for concert band in 3/4 called Central Park Waltz. Tell us a little bit about how this came about.
I started writing this piece. My oldest child just graduated from a little school called Juilliard. If I like little, mom brag there for a second.
Love it.
And so I was taking our middle child, my daughter, to go visit him. And so we're flying, 6-hour flight across the country. And I started writing this piece on the plane as we were going to New York. And it was my daughter's first trip to New York ever. And she wanted to see all the things. And we spent a lot of time in Central Park. We rode the carousel. Um, and I just, so that's kind of where it came from, was that we were, doing her big first trip to New York City, and, going to visit her big brother who lived right across the street essentially from Central Park. And so um it just, I wrote it on the airplane on the way there and back, and
Cool.
finished it up, did some editing, and sent it in, and here we are. This is one of the first ones that I sent in to Carl Fisher, actually. Um, but it just came out this year. Fariones, which we're going to look at later, I think, was the first one that Carl Fisher published. But this was the first one that I sent in. And so it sat on the shelf for a minute before being released. But
And I think one thing not to overlook for young students, especially, is 3/4 is not as easy as we think it is. I mean, kids grow up in
yeah,
4/4, and then the minute you take away that beat, like just acknowledge it's a thing. And I know we're talking about grade 2, not grade 1, but there's still I make a note that it's in 3/4 because that's a teaching piece as well for young students.
yeah, I think so. And it has a key change in the middle, and there's a lot of space for rubato, for pulling and pushing the tempo, and getting kids to watch and understand that eighth notes don't necessarily mean fast. That we can, as we stretch into this key change, that those eighth notes are going to get fatter.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of like really nice teaching moments in that, I think, for learning how to watch and respond to each other, and listening for, who has the melody. It gets passed around. So I think that's a skill that I still work on with my high school kids.
Yeah. And I learned this at one point, and it was just like fascinating to me. But the fact that younger students have a harder time with slow music, like I know we're talking about grade 2, which is not like super, super young, but that the I guess the music people are comfortable playing correlates to your heart rate. So because younger students, obviously have like faster pulse, like that slower music, it's not just that they're bored with it, like it's also physiologically harder for them in some
Oh
ways
yeah.
too. So when you talk about slowing down with a young band, that's a process. It doesn't just happen. As
Yeah.
teaching, I live with a wonderful teaching middle school band director, and I hear about it all the time. Slow is not easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think kids look at it and they see slower rhythms and they're like, "Oh, this is boring," or this, And I don't know that every kid is like that necessarily, but I remember having those moments, especially playing French horn in middle school band. Like,
Mhm.
I have a page full of dotted half notes. There's no like, depending on the piece, but trying to give something, a little something of the melody, or a little something interesting and fun to play to everybody, um and having it be something that, like, I don't know, I've done a couple, like middle school honor bands as a guest conductor, and yeah, getting kids to watch and respond and stretch tempo, is, and to understand that as we do that, and then we land that crash cymbal together, or whatever it is, that moment where you hit that downbeat, that can feel so satisfying when you have created the anticipation to get to that point, rather than just like be da 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 da, that you can
Mm.
stretch and land, and then those moments are what gives music feeling and expression and excitement.
And
And
the drama that it creates, you can tap into that because all children have drama in their lives,
yeah,
and they're making musical drama
so much
as well.
drama.
Yeah. All right, beautiful. Let's listen to it. Here's
Yeah.
Central Park Waltz. Okay, the next piece we're going to listen to is a grade 4 called Farallones. It's in 7/4, but also has a 12/8 section as well. 6 percussionists plus piano. So the question I
Yeah.
have is, as the composer and practical teacher who's in the classroom as well at the same time, the piano part, is it required? Is it, or is it you could leave it out if you need to?
I mean, I could give the Randall Standridge answer, right? That everything's intentional, everything's important. Growing up as a piano player, I love piano. I love pieces that have piano for concert band. Um, they're
So
one that I
I
yeah,
would agree that it's ideal, but
yeah,
like if somebody hears this and they love it, but they're like, oh, I don't have a piano player right now, should they not do it if they don't have a piano player?
they should still do it.
Okay, okay,
I
that's
think
maybe a
I
clearer
try to
way to
write
ask
so
that.
that yeah, I mean, I try to write so that the piano part is important and adds to it. It's not just doubling things all the time. It's but at the same time, if you don't have a piano player, who in your audience is gonna know? Nobody. Like there's nobody in your
Yeah,
audience is gonna know. They don't know this piece.
yeah.
Most likely.
So the fact that it's in 7/4 and 12/8, that's a teaching moment right there.
Yeah. Um so that this piece started out, this is like super dorky, but there was like a call for scores that was for this ensemble in the Bay Area. And it's a chamber music ensemble, and you could write for up to 7 members of this chamber ensemble. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to write for 7 people, and I'm going to put it in 7/4 because why not? Like, it's just like a stupid reason to put something in a certain time
Mm-hmm.
signature, but I'm sure other pieces have been written for dumber reasons, who knows? But so yeah, so 7/4 was because I was writing initially for 7 players. And I ended up, it was just a call for scores. It wasn't a commission or anything. And so I missed the deadline for, so I didn't finish it. And then it sat there for a minute, and I was like, you know what, this could be a concert band piece. So it started out with piano, string bass, which is why the piano is in there. Piano, string bass. There's also string bass part, but again, if you don't have a string bassist in your wind ensemble, then don't worry about it. And there's a lot of like overlapping and rhythms where one group has this rhythm and one group has this rhythm, and so you get these kind of polyrhythm things. So there's a lot of rhythmic stuff that happens, especially in the 7/4 section. The 12/8's a lot more straightforward.
Yeah.
Very piratey pirate music.
Cool. Let's check it out. Here's Farallones. Okay, so we're going to listen to one more of your pieces and then a couple questions to kind of um, wrap up as well. Again, Megan, thank you for being here.
Yeah, my
So this
pleasure.
piece is a D flat major 3/4 waltz called Salish, and it's part of a larger jazz suite that's coming out as well called Salish. Tell us about it.
Well, the first movement is where it started, which is, not necessarily always the case, starting with the first movement of something. But I started writing this piece in 2017, so a few years ago.
Mm.
Um, I grew up here, the larger body of water here in the Pacific Northwest, where it connects out and up into Canada, is called the Salish Sea, right? We think about Puget Sound as kind of this, the little bit around Seattle, but this whole collective area is the Salish Sea. And I grew up in this area sailing on these waters with my family and with my dad growing up. And in 2017, my dad passed away from brain cancer. Um, and the way we found out that he had a tumor was he was out sailing with friends and they were docking and he fell off the boat and hit his head on the dock. He'd been sailing his whole life. He was like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I fell off this dumb boat. But the MRI revealed that he had a brain tumor. And so this connection of the water, my relationship with my dad, sailing as a family, all came together in this music. And so that first movement was really a way for me to start processing my grief and my loss of my dad. And but I wanted it to be joyful and like remembering how wonderful that was and how much I loved it. Right. And so first movement is very like it's a waltz in one, really. And so I think I had this piece kind of almost done. And this was a few years later. It had been just like sitting for years. I would go back to it. I keep working on it. And then Erin Keaton Howard, who I've mentioned a couple times, she and I are kind of writing partners as well. We went on a writing retreat together. And she's like, what are you working on? What do you want to do? What do you want to get done this week? And I played that for her. And I said, I want to do this, but I feel like there needs to be more. Like maybe there need to be more movements or something, or I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's done. And she'll so write more. Just having someone outside of you say, so write more, was like this major light bulb moment. Like,
That's
oh my
awesome.
God, you're right. I should write more. And it turned into a 6 movement suite that was premiered in 2023 by the Seattle Jazz Ed Girls Ellington program, and then was recently played by the University of Puget Sound as well. So the whole suite has been performed a couple times. I just finished up recording it. So we just finished a recording project for the suite. And it's like in mastering right now. So
very exciting.
It will be, released really soon, hopefully.
Love it. All right, well, let's listen to at least some of the first movement. Here's Salish. Megan, thanks so much for spending the time. Hope people have enjoyed your music and enjoyed our conversation here. I'd like to just leave with a question of a piece for a concert band and a piece for jazz band that you kind of find yourself going back to that you think are great material for teaching for your students.
Yeah. For concert band, I haven't gone back to this one yet because we just played it a few years ago, and I know that I will go back to it. And it's called "To Create a Voice" by Carol Britton Chambers, and I love it because the sentiment behind this piece is um, like finding your voice through music, right? And so the first three notes are B flat, C, D, and so you get this you're learning your instrument, right? Like, what are your first notes that we learn on our instrument? And so it just starts with like very simple do re mi, and then builds from there into this beautiful piece that's a lot of fun to play. And I really love teaching it. My students really love playing it. So I'm just like, maybe this, like, it might be enough years that I could do it
Hmm.
again. It
What's
won't be like a
what's
repeat
the
for
grade
some of my
level?
kids.
What's the grade level?
I think it's a three. I think it's a grade three.
Great. And then for jazz band?
Um, I think it's really important. You said you're going to talk about rhythm changes a little bit. The students
Yeah.
learn rhythm changes. Um, and one of the tunes that I really love is Bearcat Shuffle by Mary Lou Williams. It's a rhythm changes tune, but if I remember right, it's in a different key. And it's a very early rhythm changes chart. So it's only like a couple years after I got rhythm, you get Bearcat
Hmm.
Shuffle by Mary Lou Williams. And she was such an incredible writer and voice in the jazz idiom. I think it's really important for students to learn about her and learn her music.
Yeah, and I've done Roll'em of hers. That's
Oh
another
yeah.
another great tune. Yeah, so rhythm changes real quick based on I Got Rhythm. It's AADA with the A section. The bridge basically going 3 6 2 5 on all major, dominant chords. And then the A section can be lots of different variations of the one chord and some other things in there. But the reason we talk about rhythm changes is because after the blues, that's kind of like the next big form that jazz musicians really should know about. So we're actually going to play a little bit of both of those pieces, both Carol's piece and the Mary Lou Williams piece as well, as we leave today. Megan, thank you so much for being here.
Oh,
Appreciate
my
your
pleasure.
time.
Thanks.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.